ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. Today in the Bodhasara, we are beginning a new section, and that is still, subsection, new subsection. It is still section 16, but in that subsection 18, which is an interesting subsection because up till now we saw how this worship is to be conducted. What kind of worship? The worship that is very much connected to the worship that is connected to oneness. So the steps of the puja were elaborately followed, and after the steps of the puja were elaborately followed, it was told that each step is meaning something else. Like the flowers mean inner purity, and the sipping of the water is antahkarana shuddhi. Like this, we saw a very elaborate series of steps, and we concluded that 2 weeks ago, last time when we had the class. So this particular section has to do with a upending the concept of worship itself from the standpoint of non-duality. So when we talk about the fact that oneself and Bhagavan, there is no separation, there is no difference. Myself and Bhagavan are one. When that kind of a conversation is going on, then you can make a lot of room for oneness in worship, etc. And all that is fine. But then here, the basic contradiction between Brahman, which is oneself, which is Bhagavan, and that which is worshipped, namely a deity, etc., which the primary thing that is needed for worship is objectification. Without objectification, there is no worship. Because worship is in the form of various forms. You wave the lamp, you wave the incense stick, and you do naivedya, om pranaya swaha, etc. So that shows that there is obviously there is a separation. You can say till you are blue in the face, it's an as though separation. I have Atma Bhava and I consider it everything one. All this you can tell yourself. But this section is going to say that even if you tell yourself this story, and it is still ultimately a separation. It seems to be, it appears to be from the face of it, based on at least the first few verses, based on the message from the Kenopanishad. In the Kenopanishad, there is a section, there is a whole section on what Brahman is not and what Brahman is. Both are very important. What is Bhagavan and what is Brahman? Same thing. Brahman and Bhagavan are used interchangeably in the Upanishad, a fact that Adi Shankara has brought out in all his bhashya. And they are not two different entities. And so, what is this Bhagavan? What is this Brahman? And that is important to know. And because of the pervasive delusion and the habitual delusion under which we have operated from time immemorial, the buddhi is ensconced in this duality. So then it is also important to know what Brahman is not. So what Brahman is not comes under the methodology called na iti, neti, neti, not this, not this, not this. And that negation forms an important prakriya, pedagogy of revelation. Why? Because without this pedagogy, then you confuse what Bhagavan is not for what Bhagavan is. That is in fact the original mistake. confusing yourself to be the body when you are not the body, confusing yourself to be the mind, to be the senses, etc., when that is clearly not the case. So here now we are very interesting section, because in the based on the Kenopanishad, because the Kenopanishad first dismisses what Brahman is not, or rather dismisses that later. First establishes what Brahman is. Like, for example, a very famous verse, Yad vacha anabhyuditam, yena vak abhyudyate, tadeva brahmatvam vidhi, na idam yadidam upasate. So, this is a very, and this last line, Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. This Nedam Yadidam Upasate Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi. Know this alone to be Brahman. Na idam, not this which you worship. So there is a very big, separation from the day-to-day understanding of the person who has thus far led a Vaidika life, which has prioritized worship to the, and sung its glories as a ladder for Antahkarana Shuddhi, as a way to mark one's day. You start with worship, and you be in that worship, and that's what it is. But the worship has always been presented in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads, as a means to an end, not an end in itself. Unfortunately, what happens is that when one discovers the devotee within oneself, then it is difficult to let go. It looks impossible to let go. There are so many obligations because you have devised a relationship with Ishvara. And who is the one relating to Ishvara? The one who doesn't know that I am non-separate from Ishvara is relating to Ishvara. And so, in this relationship, what happens? In this relationship, there is always Dvaita Bhava lurking, a lurking Dvaita, not a Dvaita that advertises itself. Yes, Soham Bhavena Pujayet. It's you always say, I am this and I am non separate from you. And even there are mudras. Mudras means hand motions that call for this non separation, that illustrate this non separation. How, like, you take the flower from the bowl which has the flower, and you put it on your heart, and you put it on your head, and then you offer it. So that it shows that, okay, I'm offering from my heart, we are one. But then it's still, if we are extremely candid with ourselves, it's still, there is a little whiff of duality in all this. There is a smell of duality that is reeking in the air, a slight smell. Yeah. And so it doesn't go. Like Indian houses, which nobody, after living in it for several years, nobody wants to buy, because the smell of Indian cooking, all the turmeric and the masalas and everything has gone and caught hold of, is in the walls, is in the drapes. So you can't enter an Indian house, no matter how well ventilated it is, without smelling dal, rice, khichdi, etc. So it's there permanently. And similarly, this lurking Dvaita is there permanently. I think I told this story once. Once, I had to catch a plane from Seattle back to India. And then I went from Eugene, and then there was not that much time. Eugene to Seattle, okay, that was what is that? Non issue. It reached on time and everything, but there was not that much time between that and the next flight. And then they said gate number is something, S10 or something like that. So then everywhere I looked, I went round and round and round. There was S11 and there was S9, no S10. And then I said, what, where, what to do? And, I just made two more rounds, couldn't find it. And then suddenly I had a little smell of Indian food. So I decided to follow that. And when I followed that, I had to climb down a series of small escalator. And then there it was, S10 hiding with all the Indian people with their, it was winter, with their jackets on and smelling of Indian food. And so this is the, so this is what it is. This is how you find out. So like this, the whiff of duality does not leave. As long as we are talking of worship, no worship is possible without objectification, because after all it is form. And this is exemplified very, very nicely in the, what is that, Kathopanishad, Bhashya, where Adi Shankara makes a very important difference. And I had the people in Eugene memorize this. Param chet jnayeta. Param chet jnayeta. Aparam chet dhyayet. Dhyayet means if we are talking of aparam Brahma, if we are talking of sagunam Brahma, if we are talking of Ishvara endowed with the qualities of the one who is the cause of the universe, the one who is the cause of the sustenance of the universe, and the one unto whom the universe, just resolves. If we are talking of that, then then of course worship is possible. You then names and forms are possible. You can say, oh, you are Nandishvara, or you are Koteshvara, or you are Brihadishvara in Tanjavur. You can call so many, you can call Ishvara by many names, many forms. Small Shivalinga, big Shivalinga, huge Murti, small deity. All this is possible. And that difference is from the standpoint of the body, mind, sense complex. The difference is not from the standpoint of that Satchidananda Tattva. It's not from the standpoint of Satchidananda, where there is no difference. So, aparam chet, if we are talking of aparam Brahma, relative manifestation of Brahman in the form of Ishvara, then worship is possible. But if we are talking about what is it that makes Bhagavan Bhagavan, that consciousness, then there is no worship possible. Paranchet, jnayeta, all you have to do is know it. Then worship is not possible. Oh, does that mean a jnani should not worship? No, that's not the idea. What the jnani should do and should not do is not even in question, because the jnani doesn't have rules. Jnani can worship, jnani need not worship. So then what's the difference between an ajnani and a jnani? Ajnani cannot but worship. The jnani can worship, need not worship, and there is freedom there. For the jnani, there is no freedom. That is the thing. There is a sense of obligation, because that sense of obligation, which is a tool to know Bhagavan and which is an indirect tool of knowing Bhagavan. Why is it an indirect tool? Because it puts one on a diet of devotion, worship, and duty. And so, this diet of duty and devotion makes one fit for this knowledge. And after one is fit for this knowledge, this duty and devotion really, have to take on different iterations. The duty is let go of because one in the understanding that one is non-separate from Bhagavan and Bhagavan is taking care of everything. The duty is let go of. The obligation is let go of. And when one feels fulfilled, when one feels fulfilled, there is nobody to serve because everybody is yourself. And then, so the duty is let go of in the wake of this knowledge that I am everything. And that is what, the preparation for that letting go of the duty. We have a, kind of sannyasa that is called Vividisha Sannyasa. Veditum Ichha. Vividisha. And last year, when we studied what is that called? Jivan Mukti Viveka, we saw various types of sannyasa, and one of them is called Vividisha Sannyasa. All other many types of sannyasa are there, but Vividisha Sannyasa very common. The sannyasa that is taken in order to practice letting go of obligations. Otherwise, one is trained, as a jiva, one is trained to jump at the slightest thing. Oh, you want this? Okay, let me see how I can give this. And that is, that is a beautiful bhavana. But at the level of bhavana, it is good. Otherwise, one runs oneself ragged if it is indiscriminately followed. Okay, so this is something which is here is these two things coming, this two phrases coming in the Kathopanishad Bhashya, in the commentary of Adi Shankara, tell us a few things. They tell us that there is a point, there is a vantage point. There is a vantage point beyond the worshipper and worshipped relationship. There is a vista point, a vantage point that is available to myself if I'm able to see beyond this worshipper worshipped divide. That is the thing. And so, should the Jnani not worship or should the Jnani worship is not the correct question. Because after all, the Jnani, there is a category called the Jnani Bhakta in the Bhagavad Gita, which describes four kinds of bhaktas. One is the 911 devotee, only in times of distress remembers the number for Bhagavan, remembers that there is a temple, remembers that I should relate to Bhagavan. And then there is the deal maker devotee. 50-50. And if my business is successful, then I'll give you some of my money. First they say all, and then as the business is successful, then they redraw the contract and then they say half. When the business is really successful, they'll say okay, a tenth. Okay, this is how it is, the deal maker devotee. Then after that we have the jignasu devotee, the one who is desirous of knowing who are you, what makes you tick, who is this Bhagavan, who am I. This is the kind of devotee that one wants to be. And then finally, there is Jnani Bhakta, the one who is a Bhakta from the standpoint of the body, mind, sense complex, always surrendered to Bhagavan, but then from the standpoint of knowledge, knows that I am you alone. I am none other than you. So knowing that full well performs a role in society for the sake of other people. Because supposing if the Jnani were to enter a temple and stand erect and say, "Oh, I am a Jnani, I don't do namaskar," then what kind of an effect will it have on all the other people assembled there? And so the Jnani performs a role of of the devotee from the standpoint of the body mind sense complex, and with a role that is there, to not flout the ways and means of the world, of society, etc., to not flout the rules. Just like Lord Rama, being fully enlightened, still wept and hugged every tree, saying, "Where is my Sita?" after Goddess Sita was abducted. Who can abduct Goddess Sita? Who is knowledge? She is knowledge that gives Shanti. That's why she's called Vaidehi. She doesn't have a body, she cannot be objectified. So who can abduct knowledge? No, as though abduct, as though eclipse. And Ravana is full of ego. That's why 10 heads, raga, dvesha, everything. So takes Shanti away. Shanti that belongs to Lord Rama is taken away as though. And Lord Rama knows that. But he has to, since he is in the human body, and even though he is full well aware that this is really not happening and this is not touching me, he goes through the motions of performing the role of what? Being the first tree hugger in history and and hugging every tree and asking like a madman, have you seen my Sita? Have you seen my Sita? He's talking to the birds, he's talking to the squirrels, he's talking to all the forest life and wondering where Sita went and weeping. And so this is the humanization of the Lord, which is actually makes Bhagavan, these stories of the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and the conceptualization of this, that once this avatara is taken, and once even even Bhagavan in a human body is as though subject to its various limitations, as though limitations, performs the roles, knowing full well that one is free of the roles. So the jnani also is like that. When the jnani worships and when the ajnani, the one who doesn't know, worships, there is a big difference. There is a big difference, and that difference is precisely this, that the jnani's worship is free of wants, free of agenda, free of obligation. This is the difference. And the jnani can worship, need not worship. And then it is also a kind of a inspiration for other people in the society. That is how it is visualized. So this is the section in the Kena Upanishad, very important section. So one particular verse says, Yad vacha anabhyuditam, that which cannot be objectified by speech. Not possible to objectify by speech. Why? Why not possible to objectify by speech? Because whatever you address by speech is what? Is got a name and a form. You can say, "Oh goddess." Goddess means what? Bhagavan with a female form. Bhagavati. Oh goddess, you have 20 arms, and in each arm you are carrying one weapon. Each one's scarier than the other, and all of them are pointed towards my raga and dvesha. That is why those arms are there, to relieve me of severe prejudices and preferences, deep rooted and problematic prejudices and preferences, dvesha and raga. You are there to cut those dysfunctional and codependent cords asunder, so that I can be free to see that I am you. Already there is form. She's sitting on a tiger, which represents anger. Sometimes a lion, again, which represents a bestial anger. And she's sitting on that, meaning she's riding on the anger, meaning she has mastery over the anger. So all these are forms. And these forms, they make it easy to relate to Bhagavan. When Bhagavan is looked at from the standpoint of form, then it becomes a ladder to understand the formless as the truth of oneself. So when we talk of forms, the karmendriya means the organ of action called vak, is very, very, very active. Vak is in the center because, I can have Sahasranama. What is Sahasranama? 1008 names I can have. And I can have 1008 names. I can have 108 names. I can have 100,008 names. Each one describing, oh goddess, your prowess, your abilities, and your stories from the Puranas, how you made short shrift of this demon, how you took care of that demon, how you pretended to, you pretended to string along this other demon, but then at the last minute, you flipped the script on him, and then he was, and then you were standing on him afterwards, because standing on him means you had vanquished him. And so like this, all this, is there. And then you can endlessly, you can wax eloquent. And this is very wonderful, because then the goddess becomes real, and then the relationship to the goddess also becomes real. She is my mom, she's my mother. She's going to protect me. She's my mother, she's my protector. She's going to love me like nobody else has. This becomes a very, very effective way of connecting, relating, etc. It's just so wonderful. And so this is all very, very nice. But then what happens is that there is a, there is a way to grow out of this. Not only is there a way to grow out of this prescribed in the Upanishad, there is a need to grow out of this, because, as I said, one thinks that this is a view that is there available to me. I relate to the goddess, and the goddess gives me goodies at the end of this because of my karma phala, and it is wonderful. And but this is not the full view. Like when you're driving on some scenic highway, what happens is that you see that there is a vista point, and then you pull over, and then you look, but then you climb a few yards further, there is another vista point that is nothing compared to the one that you previously visited, because it is offering a much better view. So that Bhagavan is to be milked for my own, for my own desires. That Bhagavan is Kamadhenu, is a wish fulfilling cow, is one level. It's one level of relating, it is one way of understanding. And this itself is a lot, because people don't even get here. Many people don't even get to the privilege of the first vista point. Not possible. Then, then if one is ready, one can let go of this vista point for, for the vista itself. So the first vista point is a point of view, and the second one is the vista itself. It is the view. So the point of view is enjoyable and is important, and it can be understood nicely if one has in mind the entire view. Then the point of view becomes meaningful. But, and this is important, but if the point of view is mistaken for the view, then this is a travesty. And so this particular subsection is going to bring this out. And it is based on this Kenopanishad. Yat vacha anabhyutita. That where the vak becomes silent, nothing can be described. What are you going to describe? How are you going to describe that which cannot be objectified? How are you going to describe? Describe consciousness in 10 sentences or less. What are you going to say? Nothing. You can't even come out with one sentence. And the Vak says, this is beyond me. I can't do this. The mind also says, I can't do this. We give up. Why? Because it's not an object, it's you. And secondly, it need not be described because it is broadcasting itself. It is self-evident. It is a self-evident you. It need not be described at all. What is there to describe? Nothing is there to describe, because it is evident. Only things that are not self-evident need description, need the help of Vak. Whenever speech is involved, please know that whatever the speech is describing has to be has to be what? Has to be finite, has to be what? In other words, mithya, has to be, has to be temporal, time bound. So here, yad vacha anabhyutitam, that which is not in the purview of speech. And in fact, it's the other way around. That consciousness which lights up speech itself. Yena vag abhyudyate. That consciousness which lights up speech. So sometimes you're talking, correct? And then when you're talking, you find yourself saying something which you should not have said. But then who is the one that is noticing? Oh, I'm saying too much. Why? Because the other person who told me this told me not to tell anybody. Now I have spoken too much. And oh, I need to retract. I need to stop. Who is saying this? That consciousness, that awareness that lights up the speech and says, TMI, you're giving out too much information, step back, step back, because you're violating somebody else's confidence that was placed in you. Step back. So even as you're talking, you come to know. And that means what? Speech itself is objectified by which consciousness? Know that to be Brahman. That is the essence of Bhagavan. That is the essence of you. That is the truth of Bhagavan, the content of what is called Bhagavan, the content of you. Na idam, not this. Yad idam, that which upasate, people worship on an altar. And this is the alteration that one has to undergo from section 17 to section 18. And the same thing, yeah, the yat shrotrena na shrunoti, yena sarvam shrutam, by which that which the ears cannot hear, but because of which something is heard. Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi. You must know this to be Brahman, not that which people put on their altar and worship, not that which has a name, not that which has a form. And so, with this introduction, let us get into this very interesting and paradoxical sometimes section, which is cloned, in the memory of the Keno Upanishad. अथ देवपूजा उपयुक्तशास्त्रनिर्णयः. निर्णयः means decision, ascertainment. So, ascertainment of what? Deva Puja Upayukta Shastrartha. So, the ascertainment of Upayukta means the appropriate. The ascertainment of the appropriate Shastrartha, the meaning of the essence of the teaching about Deva Puja, about worship of Bhagavan. So, and the verse starts off with kind of a little bit of a cryptic verse. Tyaktva mohamayim pujam bodhamayim kuru, chandanairarchaniyoyam natu pankena shankaraha. Tyaktva mohamayim pujam bodhamayim kuru, chandanairarchaniyoyam natu pankena shankaraha. Tyaktva, having given up. Given up what? Mohamayim puja. A puja that is mohamaya, maya. And since puja is feminine, mohamayim puja. Mohamayim puja, that is the object of tyaktva, having given up the deluded worship, deluded form of worship. And here the suffix maya means nothing but moha, all delusion, a personification of delusion. Swarthe mayat. So, tyaktva, having given up what? Mohamayim pujam tyaktva. Having given up the puja that is filled with the delusion of duality, with the delusion of obligation, with the delusion of fear. What will happen if I don't worship? OMG, OMG. OMG means what? Oh my God. But what does Vedanta teaches? Oh me God. Okay, that is what Vedanta teaches. And so this is where one has to go. And so here, this is, that fear, the delusion of fear, the delusion of dependency, the delusion of cause and effect. If I do puja, something good will happen. And then by a kind of a connection, what is that? By a logical corollary, if I don't do puja, something bad will happen. So this kind of a delusion, fear, and even the missing. Oh, I didn't do to puja today. I'm missing Bhagavan. Where is Bhagavan? Sitting on my altar. and and so this is what it is. And so this is the puja. And this kind of a puja, you please give up. Tyaktva. And it doesn't see these. This is the good thing about Vedanta. It just tells you, do this. It doesn't say, oh, here are the baby steps. Nothing. Come on, get over yourself. Leave this. Tyaktva, having left. In fact, it assumes that you are already with the teaching and you have already left. Having left, leave it. What are you still holding on to? After, and how much of this, if you look at this big book, we have studied quite a lot of sections here. And so, having studied half of Bodhasara, section 16, so half of Bodhasara, chapter 16, we have come. You're still holding on to this? Get over yourself. Leave this. The author says, meet me. Meet me here. If you are ready, follow me. Meet me to this point, this vista, where this vast expanse of, where in this abode, in your true abode, in the true abode of that which is called Bhagavan, in the true abode of the self, the vast vista of everything that you ever wanted and saw is all included. All the names and forms are included and then transcended. All the divisions are there, but then they are falsified and everything is there. Then you are looking at everything because you're not affected by any one thing, because all of them are mithya. You alone are satyam. So join me here, he says. Tyaktva mohamayim pujam. Coming out of this deluded relationship and this kind of a worship, and what else is the delusion? The delusion is also one more thing. It encompasses a kind of a habit. The delusion is a habit. What kind of a habit? My mother did this, my great grandmother did this, my father did this, and this is how I have to do. They went to church, so I have to go to church. They went to temple, so I have to go to temple. This is the delusion, that kind of a habit. That habit itself is the delusion. And so the delusion of the fear, delusion of sorrow, missing, and that separation, delusion of this habitual orientation, delusion of obligation, delusion of this cause-consequence connection between myself and what I think to be Bhagavan. All this having left, what should I do now? Pujam bodhamayim kuru. Very interesting. The author doesn't say don't do puja. He doesn't say don't worship. Don't have a worshipful attitude, he doesn't say. He says convert the puja into bodhamayi puja. Bodhamayi means that which is nothing but knowledge. A puja that is based on oneness, a puja that is based on non-separation. That kind of worship you do, and then that kind of worship, what it looks like. I don't want to. What should I say? What is that? I don't want to give you a spoiler alert because the author himself is going to bring it out slowly in the succeeding verses. What this Bodhamayi Puja looks like, this is just the pratigna, thesis statement. for this whole section. So what kind of puja should I abandon? That which is ensconced in a sense of obligation, that which has a sense of duty stamped on it, that which is based on the delusion of sorrow, fear, separation, and cause and consequence, all these things. Leave that and do the puja that is the puja of awareness, a puja of awareness, and then a worship that is founded on the understanding that I am non-separate from that which to which this worship is being directed. So why is this important? Because he says this is the rule. This is the rule of Vedanta, is non-duality. You can't just suddenly say this is not this. This is the vision of Vedanta. Just like when you worship Lord Shiva, on the Shivalinga, do you take some sludge, kind of a thick mud and throw it? No, you don't anoint Lord Shankara with mud. Why? Because it's not to be done. The very thought of it is sacrilege. Very interesting. The thought of smearing or anointing the Shivalinga with some kind of a dirt that is taken from the roadside and thrown upon the Shivalinga is sacrilegious. Instead, what you should do, you should anoint with some sacred substance like chandanam. Chandanam means what? Sandalwood paste. You take sandalwood paste, you take vermilion paste, you take turmeric paste, vibhuti, all that is there, sacred items. It is actually it's an act of profanity to basically, throw, or you say you are worshipping Shankara, but then you're throwing some mud. This becomes a very nice, a wonderful metaphor. And what is this metaphor? Metaphor here is that just like in the regular worship, you will follow all the rules. You will not mix the sacred and the profane. You don't want to flout the rules there. Here too, you follow the vision of Vedanta. In other words, without saying it, what is the author saying it? Mohamayi puja, the puja based on the delusion of sorrow, fear, and obligation, and some kind of a cause consequence connection, and the desire for karma phala. That kind of puja is akin to throwing some profane substance at Lord Shiva. That is how it is. So if you throw some profane substance at the Shivalinga, of course you will not get your karma phala even though you want it badly. Similarly, if you worship in the name of duality and keep the duality going, you will not, the vision of Vedanta will not manifest itself to you. Because here there is a fundamental confusion between the preparation and the vision. The preparation is mistaken for the vision. You mistake the vision for the preparation, and you stay at the prep mode. Always there is a prep mode, even in cooking. Prep mode is there. In cooking, what is the prep mode? You have to cut the vegetables. You have to wash the vegetables. You have to cut the vegetables. And then you have to gather all the ingredients of the recipe. At least you have to have them at hand. You have to have them within reach. And then there is a krama. First you heat up a little bit of oil, and then you put the mustard seeds, and then you put this and that, and then you put the vegetables, and you cover the vegetables so that they cook in the steam. All these things are there. There is a certain krama and order. So, but then, if you are just at the prep mode and then you refuse to begin the cooking because you have got too attached to the prep mode. So you keep on cutting vegetables, you keep on collecting the things for the recipe. How long can that continue? No, I'm doing this life after life after life. There is something wrong. This is what is called Mohamayi Puja. You're stuck in the prep mode. This puja, that, oh, there is a Bhagavan, and then this Bhagavan is on my altar, and then that altar is it's an altar of surrender for me, it's an altar of worship. All this is fantastic, wonderful, great. But then you have to get into the actual cooking mode. And that is what is called Bodhamayi Puja. You have to get out of this separation. The separation is there. It is a tentative, what should I say, placeholder to recognize that which you worship as yourself. And that recognition cannot take place until and unless this mode itself is given up, and not giving up the mode and defiantly staying in the prep mode all the time is a sacrilegious act. It is it is akin to throwing some kind of a terrible substance at the Lord, and like some kind of a profane language used in worship, which is not done, or throw something like panka. Panka means this, instead of pankaja, pankaja means born of sludge, which is lotus. Instead of offering a lotus to the Lord, what are you doing? Offering panka, the sludge itself. And so your puja, the Dvaita puja, after knowing so much Vedanta, if you continue, then this duality puja is like is a sacrilegious act. And then we go to verse number 2. Parichiya pura devam deva puja paro bhava देवे परिचयो नास्ति वद पूजा katham bhavet. Very nice, paradox. Parichiya means having understood. Pura, beforehand. Having understood beforehand. Beforehand means what? Before you do the puja at hand. Okay, that's what we mean by beforehand. So beforehand, having understood, parichiya pura. Pura means beforehand, having understood Devam, what Bhagavan is. And it's interesting, the word Devam, Dyotanatmakatvat, because of that shine. Devam means that shining Atma, which is all awareness. So, Parichiya Pura Devam, having understood this Bhagavan before, Deva Puja Paro Bhava. Deva Puja Paraha Bhava. Deva Puja Paraha means an expert. So become an expert in God Puja. Become an expert. When? Only after having understood. After having understood Bhagavan, then only you start doing the puja, because in non-understood Bhagavan, how can you worship? This is what he's going to ask in the next line. So how can you worship that which you don't know? How can you worship? You have to know it in order to worship. And so first get familiar with what Bhagavan is. And then you then you commence the worship. This seems like a logical thing to do. Parichiya pura devam deva puja paro bhava. Become an expert in puja of Bhagavan after you come to know what Bhagavan is. Meaning what? After the study of Vedanta. Because Vedanta takes you close to Bhagavan. Vedanta unfolds the relationship of you and Bhagavan as one. Vedanta demystifies and reveals Bhagavan as the truth of the self. So study Vedanta first. Why? Because otherwise you'll just get hampered by these obligations and you'll get stuck in delusionary puja. Illusionary puja. That's why study Vedanta first. And then then you become an expert in Deva Puja. Because he tries to convince you again about this way. How he says, Deve Parichayo Nasti. When you don't have an understanding of what Bhagavan is, Vada Katham, please tell me how puja bhavet. How can there be worship? If you don't know what you're worshipping, how can there be worship? It's like going to a restaurant where you're served something, you don't know what it is. How can you eat? How do you know that they are whatever is dished out is within your dietary needs or whatever your dietary restrictions are? So before the dish comes, you have to ascertain it is gluten free, it is grain free, it is sugar free, it is salt free, taste free. Somehow it should not be taste free, but it should be free of all these things. It should be organic. It should be pesticide free, and it should all be free. Why? Because I feel bound. That's why I want my food to be free, at least. So this is so I won't eat unless I know what is it that I'm eating. So similarly, here, just like you won't eat until you know what you're eating, similarly, don't worship until you know what you're worshipping. And you cannot know what you're worshipping until you study Vedanta. And when you study Vedanta, then, until you study Vedanta, then there is no worship possible. Deva parichaye, the Deva parichaya nasti. When you don't know what you're worshipping, vada puja katham bhaved. How can it be called puja? You're just going through the motions because you don't know what you're worshipping. You don't know what that is. And then, it gets very much more interesting in verse number 3. तावत् पूजां न मनुते यावत् परिचयो नहि जाते परिचये देवः पूजामपि न काङ्क्षति तावत् पूजां न मनुते यावत् परिचयो नहि जाते परिचये देवः पूजामपि न काङ्क्षति. So first contradiction we encountered right in verse number 2, that you can't worship until you know. How can you worship something that you don't know? And then here, tavat pujam na manute. It is not considered puja. Tavat means until. So, pujam na manute. It is not considered puja. Tavat until yavat until then it is not considered puja. Yavat until parichayo nahi, until there is no understanding of what this Bhagavan is, until you have not become acquainted with the nature of Bhagavan, you cannot worship. Who are you to worship? You don't know Bhagavan and you are worshipping. And the main treatise, which are the Upanishad, the main text which reveal the nature of Bhagavan, you haven't studied. What right you have to worship? Until this parichaya means acquaintance, until this knowing of what Bhagavan is, you cannot worship. Okay. I'll keep the lamp aside. I'll keep the incense sticks aside. I'll keep the naivedya aside. I'll come and study. Here I am studying Tattva Bodha. Here I am studying Atma Bodha. Here I am. Okay. Wonderful. Now what? Oh, I think the parichaya is dawning on me. This acquaintanceship with Bhagavan is coming. I'm understanding who this Bhagavan is. Who is this Bhagavan? Huh? You're understanding? Tell me, who is this Bhagavan? Me alone. This Bhagavan is Satchidatma Swarupa, Satchidananda Swarupa. It is in the form of that which is limitless, which is whole, which is in the form of that consciousness which cannot be objectified. That is the truth of Bhagavan. OMG, oh me, which is God. I understand. I understand this oneness. And so, where is this God? Oh, I just told you, everywhere. Starting with this body, mind, sense complex, the indweller. So, does this God is wanting worship? Is this God wanting worship? Does this God says, where is my Naivedya? Where is my lamp? You have to worship me. No. So, this is another paradox. Jate parichaye devaha. Once you know what this Bhagavan is, there is no need for worship. So, when you worship Bhagavan without knowing, it is not called worship. So, you better know Bhagavan. And once you know what Bhagavan is, then who is the one who is worshipping? Who is the one that is worshipped? And is this Bhagavan revealed by the Upanishad, demanding worship and saying, where is my Nitya Puja? Where is my daily dry fruits that you were leaving at the altar? What happened to that? No, not at all. So this is the very, very beautiful section here, and lot of opportunities for contemplation. Lot of opportunities to just withdraw from the day in and day out, the rut of complacency that one gets into. One makes a compartmentalization of one's life. Oh, the one who is offering water, dry fruits, and incense and arati to Bhagavan is someone else, and someone else is studying Vedanta classes. And so that inner duality has to be healed in order to understand this vision, in order to assimilate this vision deeply. So, this is the paradox. Until you know Bhagavan, worship is not possible. Once you know Bhagavan, worship is also not possible. Once you know Bhagavan, there is no need for worship, because that Bhagavan is not a demanding Bhagavan saying, you better worship me. And then, verse number 4. पक्षद्वयेऽपि पश्यामि पूजां देवस्य दुर्घटाम् पूज्य पूजकथा नज्ञे मूर्खस्त्वज्ञानसूतकी. So pakshadvaye api pashyami. Now I am in a real quandary, because there is pakshadvayam. What is pakshadvayam? There is two sides to this. There are two irreconcilable situations here. Two sides to the story. What are these two sides? You know, and in both, one side is the one who is an ignoramus is worshipping. So can it be called worship? It's a rhetorical question. Of course, it cannot be called worship. The answer is no. And then the other one, in the other scenario, the knowledgeable one is worshipping, and the question is why? Does your God, who is everywhere and who is everything and who is the truth of you, demanding worship? These are the two scenarios. Pakshadvayam, two sides. Pakshadvayepi pashyami. In these two sides, I see clearly. The author says, Pujam devasya durghatam. Either way, it is very difficult to worship Bhagavan. So, if I don't know, it is difficult to worship because I don't know what I am worshipping. If I know it is difficult to worship, what? Am I a fool? No, what is it that I am worshipping? If I don't know, of course it is difficult to worship, because, sir, that's why in Sanskritam there is a nice verse, Kidrishopi Mahadeva, who, whatever you look like, oh Bhagavan, let my prayer go to you, because I don't know who you are, I don't know where you live, and I don't know what you do. And so so that is itself fraught with ignorance. Okay, so first I shouldn't do puja. First I should dismiss the ignorance. Okay, dismiss the ignorance means what? What will you do if you dismiss the ignorance? I'll dismiss the ignorance and then do puja, because how can I do puja when I have ignorance about the object of worship? Hello, the object of worship has now become the subject, is non-separate from the subject. The subject-object difference has collapsed, has completely been rendered, moot. It's not there. It's not needed. The subject is non-separate from the object. Then, puja pujakata. So puja is the in the knower. Puja means no, not knower. Pujaka means knower, in the worshipper. Puja means in the object of worship. So puja kata nagne. Nagne means that the not knowing. Nagne. Nagne, dual, because there are two, puja, pujakata. So, in the not knowing of who is the worshipper and what is the worshipped, murkha tu ajnana sutaki. And so, the one that is left is the one that is contaminated by ajnanam. Contaminated by ajnanam. Ajnanam means Ignorance. Ignorance of Bhagavan, ignorance of Jagat, ignorance of the self, it is the same. Self-ignorance and Bhagavan ignorance are one and the same because the self is Bhagavan. And so when the self is known as Bhagavan, the puja becomes, redundant. When the self is not known as Bhagavan, the puja is not puja. It is just it is an ignorant act. A little more to see here and some references to the Upanishads. We'll see that next time. Uh, 29th, I think, yeah. 29th of October. Okay, yeah. 2 weeks from now, Saturday. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरि